You know, back in 2008, The Dark Knight gave us more than just a superhero movie. It really unleashed this force of nature that would completely redefine what a villain could be on screen. So today, we're going to break down just how Heath Ledger and Christopher Nolan created their unforgettable agent of chaos, the Joker.
I mean, that one line from Alfred, it just perfectly sums up the terrifying idea behind this character. He's got no rules, you can't buy him, and there's absolutely no logical motive. See, he's not a criminal in the way we usually think of one. He's more like a test, a challenge to the very soul of Gotham. Okay, so let's really get into it. How on earth do you create a character that feels both larger than life and, somehow, terrifyingly real? Well, the story is pretty incredible. It involves a truly courageous actor, a visionary director, and a deep, deep dive into the look and feel of pure anarchy.
So first things first, you gotta remember the massive challenge the filmmakers were up against. Jack Nicholson's Joker and Tim Burton's 1989 Batman, that was already legendary. It was a definitive performance. The idea of anyone else stepping into those clown shoes was, for a lot of people, just unthinkable.
And get this, Heath Ledger himself felt that way. He knew, right from the start, that to make this work, he couldn't just copy or try to compete with Nicholson's classic. No way. He had to create something brand new, something that belonged to a totally different, grittier universe.
And right there, that was the key. See, for Christopher Nolan, this wasn't about making just another comic book movie. He wanted to make a great film that just happened to have Batman in it. His whole vision was this grounded cinematic reality, where a villain like the Joker had to feel like a plausible modern-day threat you could actually imagine.
So for a vision this big, you need a catalyst. You need someone brave enough to bring it to life. Finding the right actor was absolutely everything, and the choice they made was, well, it was a huge surprise and, as we all know now, an act of pure genius.
It's kind of wild to think about, but a lot of actors were actually scared to follow in Jack Nicholson's footsteps, but not Heath Ledger. He had actually turned down playing Batman earlier, but he actively went after the Joker role. He was hungry for that challenge, and that kind of courage was exactly what this character needed.
And boy, the backlash was instant. People online, critics, they just couldn't see it. It made no sense to them. But Nolan saw past all that skepticism. He saw an actor who was ready to do something huge, someone who got the chaotic energy the character had to have. It was a massive risk, for sure, but it was one they believed in.
All right, so they have their actor. Now it was time to build the Joker, starting from the outside in. And his look? Wow. It wasn't just a costume, right? It was a whole statement, his entire philosophy made visible. And here's a really cool detail. To get away from a clean, classic clown look, Nolan actually showed Heath Ledger these smeared, chaotic portraits by the artist Francis Bacon. The goal was to create something that felt lived in, something degraded and just deeply unsettling. And this is where it gets absolutely brilliant. The approach added so many layers. Ledger started applying the makeup himself, figuring that's exactly what the character would do. That's why it looks so authentic and imperfect. It's why you always had traces of it under his fingernails. And if you watch closely, as the film goes on, the makeup literally cracks and breaks down, just like the chaos he's unleashing on Gotham.
And that same thinking went right into the costume. They called the concept anti-dandy. So yeah, he has the flamboyant purple suit and the green hair, but it's all presented as grimy and worn. The whole idea was, this is a guy who just doesn't care. He wears the same thing every day, probably sleeps in it. It's style that's just been buried under a layer of filth.
So where did they pull that vibe from? Well, they looked to some absolute legends of punk and rock. We're talking about the energy of figures like Iggy Pop and Keith Richards, people who inspired a look that was jagged, a little bit dangerous, and completely unique.
Okay, so they nailed the look. But then came the performance itself, and this is where everything came together. Ledger didn't just play the Joker, he became him, creating a character whose every single move was a jolt to the system. The story of the voice is fascinating. Apparently, Ledger revealed it really gradually, even to Nolan. It was this bizarre, unpredictable thing, just constantly shifting in pitch from super high to really low. When he first truly unleashed it on set, you could literally feel the crew react. It was terrifying because you just never knew where it was going to go next. And it wasn't just the voice. His whole physicality was completely unique. Ledger took what they call an external approach, letting the costume and the makeup inform how he moved. Nolan even compared his presence to a silent film star like Buster Keaton.
It was just this totally distinct and unnerving way of carrying himself. And all of this, it created this incredible, terrifying spontaneity. You know that slow, menacing clap in the jail cell? Totally unscripted. That was all him. He kept everyone, and I mean everyone, on their toes. The other actors, the audience, even the director, never really knew what he was going to do next, which is pure Joker.
You know, Christopher Nolan had the perfect analogy for what the Joker's role was in this story. He compared him to the shark in Jaws. Think about it. He doesn't have a normal character arc. He doesn't learn anything or change. Just like that shark, he's this constant, motiveless force of nature that just shows up and creates absolute havoc, driving the entire story forward.
But here's the thing, the Joker is so much more than just a physical threat. When you boil it all down, his battle with Batman is a war of ideas. It's a fight for the very soul of Gotham. I mean, this is his whole reason for being. The Joker truly believes that deep down, when things get really bad, so-called civilized people will eat each other. He's not a villain who's after money or power. He's out to prove a point, that all the rules we live by are just a fragile, ridiculous lie.
So what you have is this perfect head-on collision of philosophies. On one side, you have Batman, who's struggling to force order and meaning onto a chaotic world. And on the other, you have the Joker, who exists only to expose that same world as being fundamentally random and absurd. They're perfect opposites, dark mirrors of each other.
And you could even argue that, in a way, Batman created the Joker. By escalating the fight against crime, by putting on a mask and working outside the law, Batman created a space for an equally extreme response to appear. The Joker is the logical, chaotic answer to Batman's crusade for order.
And that is why their battle is so epic. The Joker's real goal isn't to kill Batman, it's to break him by forcing him to break his one rule. Because if he can prove that even Gotham's White Knight can be corrupted, then his entire worldview wins. He isn't just fighting the man, he's attacking the very symbol of hope.
And that's what the film leaves us with, this deeply unsettling question. Batman might have won the physical fight, but the Joker's argument that chaos is the only real truth, it just hangs in the air long after the credits roll. It forces you to ask yourself, in a world where terrible things happen to good people for no reason at all, was he wrong? Or was he just seeing things for what they really are?